Right, good afternoon. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, maybe we need some sound there. Right, can you hear me now? Right, hello? Yes. All right, good afternoon. Yes, I seem to, second time I've got this after lunch session. Got a lovely saying in South Africa, maag is vol, oog is toe, which translated directly means stomach's full, eyes closed. So please keep your eyes closed. I know people get quite stressed, how long is this guy going to talk, so I can tell you it'll be pretty much close to 45 minutes. If it goes much over that, something's gone wrong. If it's much less than that, something's also gone wrong. So let's see how we go. So yes, I'm the general, as Chris mentioned, and I thought maybe, I think all the other gentlemen mentioned their ages. I was tempted not to, but I will. I'll be turning 51 on Saturday. And yes, I'm the general manager of a fruit pulp and syrups manufacturing company called Fruitique. We are a division of a sort of a medium-sized dairy company called Faircape, and we're based in Cape Town in South Africa. Fruitique consists of just about 70 employees. Faircape's nearly over 1,000, but Fruitique alone is 70 staff, from me down to the operators on the floor. And we started MBU implementation about 10 years ago now. And we've implemented, or we have six level 1 teams and a level 2 team, and we've implemented 5 modules: goal alignment, 5S, asset care, quality module, and of course problem solving. And so today I just really want to try and take you through this 10-year journey that we've had. Now you'll understand what the process I'm going to talk about is not sort of a planned process, it's as it's happened. So I'm kind of almost speaking about it retrospectively in terms of what's happened and the realizations we had as we've gone along. So I tried to look at this evolution on an axis like this, where you can see that as people capability increases, so we were able to improve our processes as well. Not only able to improve our processes, but almost have to keep improving your processes. So I've broken the journey into 3 phases. You won't read about this anyway, these are just my words. And the first phase I call the prescribed phase. In other words, doing it by the book. And then as we learned lessons and matured a little, we moved into what I call the tailor and standardized phase. And as we matured further, when we found we needed to challenge the teams more, refresh and stimulate the teams, while making it, and things start getting complicated, finding ways to simplify and rationalize the process. And this is where we moved into the integrated and rationalized phase, where we also need to start ensuring that we're integrating MBU into all of our other business processes. Okay, so stage 1 started in 2006, somewhere around 3 to 4 years. Difficult to really define it because it wasn't a plan, as I said to you. And we started with goal alignment and 5S. And right in the beginning we realized that the right way to do things is to follow some kind of a prescribed process. We were doing our own little version of MBUs back in 2006. And so why a prescribed process like the CDI MBUs? Well, firstly, we wanted to ensure that there'd be uniformity in approach from team to team. And quite importantly, you need an easy to follow recipe, because you want to gain momentum quickly. You get momentum quickly when you've got a recipe, and you do really need momentum to keep the process going. The other thing, obviously, is by doing it this way, you ensure that everybody has a common understanding of the principles and the rules. And I've had people visiting our factory before, and they will say, why don't you just sort of find out how it all works, and then just do your own charts and your own thing. And I always advise not to do that. So what do I mean by the prescribed process? By using the basic prescribed agenda, which you will sort of be familiar with for your daily meetings, the basic prescribed charts, making sure you measure something under each of the categories: quality, speed, cost, safety, people, even if some of them are slightly trivial. But the point is you just want the guys to get used to looking at a balanced set of measures. Even with problem solving at this early stage, it's very basic 3 Qs type problem solving. And even when we did 5S was really more just about signposting and cleaning. That's sort of the easy part. What characterizes this phase? One of the key things is the limited involvement in the workload. So you've got 1 or 2 people only that are going to, that are prepared to lead the team meetings, sometimes just the team leader. You've only got a few people that are prepared to take the responsibility for the charts in order to plot them, gather the information and plot them. And again, 1 or 2 volunteers that are prepared to do the work of being service level agreement representatives. If we look at the training, really in this stage it's really advisable, and we did it, just use get the training done in the principles by an external service provider like CDI. Why? Because you want to ensure that you embed the correct principles from the start and ensure that you've got a sort of uniform approach to these things. Obviously the training in the beginning is going to be very much using sort of generalized examples, mostly from other companies, because at this stage of course you haven't developed really good internal examples that you can use in your training. The coaching reviews as well, done initially by CDI, but very important that we're having your future coaching reviewers there to learn, because you don't want a situation where later the blind are going to be leading the blind when it comes to coaching reviews. And obviously using in the beginning very basic guidelines for what's an orange, a green, and a silver, and a gold, and so on. One then starts getting a bit of a picture of what the role of management is in this whole process. Quite simply, a high level of management involvement is required. That part you need to obviously understand, I'm sure you do. Why? Because the management need to be ensuring that your meetings happen and to help coach those meetings. Management need to ensure that they provide the infrastructure, the equipment, the tools, making sure you've got a place to meet, the boards, the stationery, and all those sort of things. Also, obviously ensuring that if the guys can't come up with measures on their own, that perhaps you just help identify measures and just approve those measures for the guys as well. If we look at the role of level 2 at this stage, it's very much a kind of covering level 1. In other words, the level 1 teams are not that mature yet, you don't have that much confidence, so you sort of duplicate what they're measuring. So if they're measuring yield every shift, then you sort of roll it up to a 24-hour rolled up figure and look at yield as well in level 2. A little unnecessary, but the kind of insurance you want in those early days while they're still developing their capability. But by now you start realizing what some of the critical success factors are. And one of the first things is that you just have to maintain the routine under all circumstances. You can't get into the situation where it's okay not to meet because. And in fact, the temptation I found often is that when there's a big problem, when there's a crisis, that's when the people say, oh, we can't meet today, we're too busy, we've got too many problems. And the thing you want to encourage right then and there is, this is precisely the time that you do need to meet. When you've got problems and crises, that's when you've got to be having these meetings. I think many people have mentioned this, but top and middle management buy-in is essential. Before you even worry with the shop floor, we discovered that, because these are the guys that have got to inspire and motivate the level 1 teams to implement and stick with this program. And if they're not turned on, well, you're not going to win. The other thing is, you realize that the teams need to see the impact of their MBU efforts on the total business performance quite quickly. They need to see that they're making a difference. So you need to find a way quite quickly to feedback on the business performance and how things are going in the business, so they can see their meaning and their purpose in the whole thing. And you can do that obviously through multi-level meetings or whatever other forum you choose to use. For me though, one of the most important things, if not the most important factor at this stage, is that you have to ensure that problems and concerns get resolved. It's the only way to give the process credibility and for the guys to realize, hey, this is worth it, this works. So even if it's just dealing with the small irritations that are out there, you know, the hand towel bin that doesn't have paper, the bin that keeps blowing over in the wind in the yard because it doesn't have some way of, you know, a holder or something like that. Or if you're even dealing with the bigger opportunities. So, you know, in this case, you've got pallets that regularly falling from height. I know in some of the places where the safety is really big, that will be a terrible thought, but the pallets falling from height, fruit pulp all over the show, taking hours to clean up. And so, a simple idea, let's go invest a little money and buy these sort of wooden supports for all our shelving and prevent that sort of thing. It's a little bit of money, but it's worth it. When these lads here have been decanting 210 litre drums day in and day out into 50 litre drums and then manually tipping them, about 10 of them per pot to make a batch, and somebody says, can't we find an easier way, and we come up with a simple solution of a decanting pump to do it. Yes, it costs a bit of money, but it's really worth it in terms of the credibility that you gain in saying, here's a problem and a concern, and the guys have seen something come out of it. That's vital. A lot of people talked about problem solving today, and at this stage it's quite important for management to provide assistance with problem solving until that skill has been mastered. You can't just leave the guy and say, go and do problem solving. Remember that if they don't see the problem solved properly early on, they're not going to see the benefits of problem solving. So then you're on a losing wicket before you've started. So you want to help them see what effective problem solving does for them. One also realizes that and understands that not everybody is cut out to be a team leader and a meeting facilitator. So don't just think that it's more senior guy, he's the technical guy, he must be the team leader. Sometimes they're not up to it. At the same time, also don't ignore the talents of perhaps some of the less senior people that have good potential that can do this role possibly better. Now it's also tempting sometimes to save work and to make work easier to try and have fewer teams and more people in the team. That's a big temptation. But teams can be too big to be effective. What happens is people either get lost in the crowd or they hide in the crowd. But neither of those things is obviously very conducive to effective teamwork. The other thing is that the teams must be able to measure and influence directly what they're doing. It's no good that they've got to wait for a supervisor to calculate some figures for them, or the system to push out some report at the end of the shift, and then the system's not working. And because by that time, well, two things. Firstly, that the teams are not taking ownership for their measures. It's something somebody gives them. And the other thing is most times the information is too late to be useful. And then, of course, everybody always wants to know what's in it for me, and several of you have talked about the rewards and recognition, and it is important to put something in place where the guys can actually get some recognition. Now, it can start off with simple things like best innovations or lucky draw innovations, rewarding people or acknowledging people for living the vision and values. But you need to do something. Okay, so guys, phase one, as you can see, there's nothing there that's particularly new. It's probably familiar with all of you, so why am I sharing it? It's mostly just because I think it's very important to do things right from the start. Also, maybe you've seen some things there. You may have identified the same critical success factors, so at least you can say, oh, we're on the right track, we're seeing the same thing, we're not alone. But then also, I want you to understand that you can't stay in that phase forever. So then we move into what I called tailoring and standardizing, or the tailor and standardize phase. So we've mastered the basics, and we've started, in this stage, we want to start adapting the processes a little to suit the specific needs of our business, the specific and unique needs of some of the teams, and just add more value. At the same time, we want to make sure that we are not losing all the good stuff that we've worked so hard to put together. So at this stage, we want to document and standardize the stuff that we've done. Sorry, I just neglected to mention, this phase was probably then in the sort of the next 4 years, roughly. So, I know most of our teams were scoring around about sort of in the 35 to over 40 on the first two modules, almost all the modules actually for that matter. On these sort of fairly broadly defined criteria though for what a green and a silver and a gold is. It was time to raise the standards, to raise the bars and to challenge the teams a bit. So we developed our own, if you like, enhanced coaching review guidelines. And so this put a lot more description into what you needed to do for a silver and for a gold. And to get a green, it wasn't just looking at the process and seeing green on the charts. The teams needed to have some basic understanding of the purpose of each of the criteria in the coaching review, as well as some of the theory behind the criteria in each of the coaching reviews. So a little more demanding. So what you see there is oh goodness. What you see there is just the guidelines for deciding on the color for question 1 in goal alignment. And obviously got several more of those. Okay. At this stage, we move beyond just the prescribed charts. I must say, yesterday I saw some of the guys that moved quite quickly to beyond some of the prescribed charts, and that's great. You start developing your own charts and templates and tracking documents for your team's needs. Also sometimes to fill the gaps where perhaps CDI haven't got a chart yet or whatever. Although I must say, very often, in fact very, very often, we work with CDI and together we come up with our own tailored chart. So we get a nice tailored chart, and of course it's done nice and professionally, so we both win. And you know, so that, for example, one of the teams wanted to track, wanted to do internal, keep pushing the wrong button here, sorry, internal customer surveys with their internal customers. And so they need a nice little tracking chart to measure those survey scores. In the quality module, we needed a template for displaying our 2-point inspection points. The teams have all put together this little team routines chart, which we look at in the forward planning part of the level 1 agenda. And it's just a little prompt: when's the next training, when's the next coaching review, multi-level meeting or whatever. And it's just when's the next red tagging or whatever. Nice tracking chart, just to bring a little bit of extra information into the meeting. We needed to put together a simple chart that shows what the rules are for raising level 1 issues to level 2. You need some rules. There's a 5S model template that we have displayed where all the 5S models are, so you just do your own thing. This is, at the bottom is our one-page standard operating procedure template. So those all things weren't prescribed, we just put it together what we wanted to do. That first page there is the first page of a 2-page simple business plan coming out of the 6 monthly team-on-team reviews. And as you can see as well there, now the daily team agenda has got a little bit more flesh to it. It's a little bit more detail. You can see when we're done asset care, we brought asset care into the agenda. And it doesn't matter whether it might just be the pallet jacks in the store, or it could be a major piece of equipment in production. To keep things interesting, we found new criteria for recognizing and rewarding people. We need to do that as well. We've got to keep it moving and bring fresh ideas. So instead of just recognizing best innovations and living the vision and values, we brought in things like recognizing self-development. Now it seems that certainly around here, I think health and safety is very high on the agenda. It's not so much where we are. And so, you know, to encourage safety improvement through near-miss reporting, we put all of the near-miss reports into Lucky Draw, and we started drawing there. So the guys, just because otherwise it's very difficult to get that sort of thing to happen. Or maybe not just recognizing those living the vision and values, but also those who've gone to the effort of actually nominating others. So just subtle changes, but it just keeps the process fresh. Now the next example is not directly from Fritique, it's in our sales and merchandising team within the Fair Cape group. Now these guys are obviously out in the retail in many regions around the Western Cape, and they don't have a team centre, but they also wanted to embrace the mini business principles, so they meet in their area somewhere. So this particular team over there, they meet on the beach, next to the beach in one of their regions. Another team meets in a restaurant, another in a tavern. We're hoping they're just doing soft drinks and nothing stronger there, but we're not sure. And of course, they don't have a team center with charts and stuff on the wall. They have to, their team center is in a file. But everything's there, as you can see. They've got their project charts, their innovation chart, the vision is in there, they've got their key performance indicator charts, and they just meet with a file, as I said, at the beach or in the, and that's what, so there was a situation where we needed to tailor the process to meet the very unique needs of a team like that. Now that we had tailored the needs, tailored the processes to our needs, it was time to entrench and standardize. And until now, everything we had done was just sort of contained in the CDI manuals and things that you get. But we needed to make it our own. And so we've written standard operating procedures for each of the modules separately in our normal standard operating procedure template and layout. We've made it part of our system. We introduced a little bit more sophistication by ensuring that we document in detail the sources and calculations for all the information for each level 1, level 2 and level 3 KPI. Why? Because we obviously want to ensure that there's a consistency of information, that it's accurate and reliable, and yes, as I said, that it has credibility. So we've got that documented very nicely, because sometimes there can be a bit of debate, where is this coming from, and how did they calculate it, and take that out of the equation. As we implemented 5S, we also noted that things started getting a bit out of hand. You just start getting signs all over the show, visual standards of every format, and the whole thing the whole place starts looking like a little bit of a Christmas tree. And it was time to just bring that back to some order. So we found that we identified the need to develop a standard for visual standards, which might sound a bit crazy, but you actually get to the point where you need that. So this defines the color coding that's needed for each of the different types of application, even the sizes and fonts for the different signs, that you don't have like a huge thing with a tiny sign and a little thing with a huge sign, and that sometimes happens, the stupid things. Everybody is doing their own thing with picture visual standards, so we identified a few standardized templates for that. Now, as the to ensure that the team centers and the charts and everything are maintained to an acceptable standard, we also want an acceptable standard that is conducive to good team meetings, to effective problem solving, and all those sort of things. So we identified some technical team center standards as well. So that varies everything from there shall be a target line to you shall only write in black to thou shalt not drink or eat in the team center. So that's the whole range of those type of things. We also decided to create some official appointments in the various MBU roles. So there's an official appointment for the team coaches, an official appointment for the team leader, and even for the Kaizen facilitator, even the role of the service level agreement rep. Because each of those, and so it's official, it's obviously displayed in the team center, but you also can, their roles and responsibilities are indicated in there. Now, also as the team started to mature, one started realizing that certain of the measures are not really adding much value, they're a bit trivial, and specifically the people measure, where everybody starts off by measuring boring old attendance. There comes a time where that doesn't add much value anymore, and so what we developed was we obviously realized that, and we all know that the people measure is about indicating the competency and commitment of your team members, because only through competent, committed team members obviously can achieve their goals. And so we developed our own combined criteria, people criteria, to include all of these aspects. So for example, you'll see there's a number of things that go into it. So it's meeting attendance on time, plotting the charts correctly, i.e. 3 Qs all done on time, and problem solving activity, near miss reports raised, whatever. So there's a scoring system. They assess it daily and come up to a weekly score which they plot. So something quite different. And again, if any of these start becoming too easy, then the point is to say, right, what else? What is not working in your team? And then that's the thing you need to add to this measure, whether it's on a competency or on a commitment side. At this stage, we're also able to use slightly more advanced problem-solving tools, so the teams naturally start turning to things like trend Pareto action charts and the fishbone charts. Remember, initially I said it was really just a sort of very basic 3 Qs. Now you must remember we're quite small, so I understand some of the bigger teams are going to take longer to finish goal alignment, but you get to the point where it can get a bit boring, and we needed to stimulate and get the guys energized again. So we introduced the additional modules of asset care, followed by the quality module. I said earlier that the measures need to add value, and somebody mentioned it earlier. It gets to the point where you're just not satisfied to see green. So the guys now don't, 7 or 8 months in a row of green does not impress anybody. You've only got 2 choices. You either stop measuring that and measure something else, or you lift that target significantly and start challenging yourself. Also, with additional modules and that sort of thing that you start doing, you start finding the workload becomes quite a bit. You've got a lot of extra things that you've added on. You've got 4 modules worth of work. But fortunately, the teams also have become more capable. They've developed more internal capability to share that workload. Remember in the beginning I said 1 or 2 people doing everything. Now they start sharing that, so you can start rotating that meeting facilitation. More guys to handle charts, more guys to handle the service level agreements and so on. The service level agreements, which get reviewed every 4 to 6 months, we move beyond just doing a review and updating, but then we introduced a simple scoring system where each of the categories in the service level agreement is scored. Now why? Because they obviously want to see, is our service to and from our customers and suppliers getting better or worse? So they can start looking at trends, for example. In the beginning, the level 2 team really needed to encourage and prod and push the guys for project ideas, but there comes a point in this stage where projects are much more easily identified, and mostly where there's opportunities to make work easier. Nobody wants to do more than they have to, and they really try very hard to tackle the things that are making their lives a misery. And you know, there's many opportunities. Well, one of the things in Western Cape, we have a severe drought problem. So very quickly the teams all latched onto a simple water saving project. Simple things, and it's good because they did their thing, they tested it. In many cases they had to get permission to implement it because obviously we're a food company, so you can't just stop washing and we'll save water. There's some constraints there. But then they would update your SOPs, update standards. In the store in the middle here, picture, oh, sorry, wrong direction. These lads in the middle here, we moved to a new cold room, and this particular customer's product had to be stretch wrapped. Now the stretch wrapper in the new cold room is 500 meters, more than 500 meters away from where the cold room is. And so we had to transport pallet by pallet with a heister to go and wrap them and then load them on the truck. And the guy said, this is a bit of a pain. We're wearing the heister tires out, if nothing else, and let's find out from the customer, can we not just hand wrap it and see if it's good enough? And so they did that, we tested, the customer said, look, I can't see any difference. And so now they just hand wrap it in the cold room, load it on the truck, and they're saving sort of 20 pallets of journeys twice a week for this particular customer. So you can see that the guys soon pick up the stuff that's making their lives a pain. Maturing teams also start seeing the opportunities to build on previous innovations. You know, I mean, it was 10 years ago when this particular thing started with the draining of the sanitizing bath, and I'm not going to go into all the detail here because I'll try and keep to my 45 minutes. But over 10 years, we've just seen 4 different transitions in this innovation as we just got it better and better, and to make things easier. And the thing is that you want to get the guys in that mindset at this stage. You want them to be constantly, encourage the mindset that's constantly looking to make things better, and combat that mindset that's, oh, just stick with the status quo, it's okay to be like that. You know, even these guys here, in the beginning, that lab team, the guys carried all these samples to the lab from the factory. Eventually the guys found some material in the red tag area and they made the trolley. But you know, as our business has grown, that wasn't good enough. So 1 or 2 years later, they just made it a double-decker trolley. Simple things, but that's how we evolve. Probably the very first S4 project that ever, or S4 innovation that ever got implemented was the protective clothing lockers. A whole lot of them, they're pretty heavy, and the cleaning lady had to get a whole lot of lads to come and help her move them every day. And then somebody said, this is dumb, let's just put it on a stand. And it's amazing, since then, in the last 10 years, almost everything's been lifted off the floor onto a stand, because the guys just see, well, it worked there, this gave us benefit, where else can we do it? Even the dustbins, they want to move the dustbin. There's a lot of cleaning in our factory with water and everything, and it's a pain moving everything. So I can't count the number of things that have been lifted off the floor in this manner. I indicated earlier that initially the level 2 teams tended to cover the level 1 teams. In other words, they sort of, you know, duplication of measures, rolling up of the level 1 measures into sort of 24-hour figures. However, as our confidence has grown in level 1, the focus has moved more to measuring the effectiveness of systems. So, for example, we're more interested in level 2 now, and I think one of the gentlemen asked earlier, how are you measuring problem solving? We're more interested in measuring the extent of closure of all the problem solving actions, problem solving investigations and actions. We'll leave the level 1 guys to measure batch rejections and do their problem solving on why that particular batch fell, but we're more interested in the closing of the loop. On the safety side, the level 1 teams will measure injuries. At level 2, we're more measuring the system, our system for trying to prevent injuries, and that is, of course, near-miss reporting, and our effectiveness in promoting that and encouraging that. And then we can monitor level 1. We have a simple robot system that you can see there. all 6 teams, KPIs and things are there, simple robot system. We can see if they need help. We don't have to measure the stuff for them. 5S at this stage started evolving from just science and cleaning to just finding more and more opportunities and innovations for making work easier. So S4 really comes into play later on. It's all the guys want to do is make their work easier. So whether it's simple things like that, I think it's self-explanatory. You know, even very simple things. But you know, you wouldn't think that it might be a hassle. But if you're working in a chest freezer, when you're working in, the lid falls on your head every time. You know, you want to find a way of avoiding that. So just get the maintenance guy, get a simple little clip that can kind of work so that you can work more easily. You know, the guys in the filling area, that sealing unit there, it's a bit of a, firstly, most of the time the water damages the electrics, so the maintenance guys complain. It's difficult to clean around there. So we just put a simple little platform on the stand. And so when we've got to clean, we lift it off, clean, do our thing, it's nice and dry, put it back. You know, simple things, because it just gets rid of unnecessary work. This is almost self-explanatory, but you know why? Bend down the whole time for your slip sheets, put it in an easy-to-reach place. And by the way, at the end of the day, you're going to have to move that pallet to clean. Again, why should we do that? We empty our pots out when we clean them out, all the residual fruit that ends up on the floor, and then somebody has to chase it all over the show to get it back into one place. So why not just fit a pipe under the pot, connect with the hose to this little bin, and that came out the red tag area, just drilled some holes in it and put some fittings on, and the next thing you can collect the fruit there, the water goes out the holes obviously, and you save yourself a hell of a lot of cleaning effort. So in this stage we've also become quite self-sufficient both in training and in coaching reviews. So I'm just going to catch up with my notes here. Yeah, we've become quite self-sufficient in coaching reviews and training. By now, the nice thing is we have our own examples that we could use in our training courses. You know, the guys, it's just so much easier for the guys to relate when they can see the stuff that they see in their factory every day. You know, we've developed several training courses, because although in goal alignment you deal with customer-supplier relationships, but we wanted to go in a little bit more detail, because it's actually probably the most difficult thing in goal alignment is that particular aspect. So I made a nice little course with some practical exercises, a simple little course on team leader role and meetings. Even MODAPs, we deal with MODAPs under 5S, but you know, we just touch on it in 5S, and guys mostly don't know how to do it after the basic 5S training. So we put together a more detailed course with a nice practical exercise for the guys to see how to do it. At the same time though, having developed a high level of self-sufficiency, we'll never forget, and one of the folks mentioned it this morning as well, it's important to not just become too internally focused. At this point you realize you've got to still make sure you have an external influence. External benchmarking, it's not including and involving the likes of CDI, who remember are visiting tens of different customers all over the world, getting new and fresh ideas, and it's good to keep having them come back and refresh your teams and give you new ideas. It's also important to keep changing processes, even at subtle things, just that subtle change to the multi-level agenda, multi-level meeting agenda, that subtle change to the rewards and recognition system, just to keep things interesting. Management behaviors have to change. You start realizing, you know, it's time to just listen more and just let go now. The guys can do it. In the beginning, we've given them everything. We've developed everything for them. Yeah, go for it. But at this stage, you're at the point where any new processes, you can really start asking the guys to develop these from the bottom up. So in other words, let them develop the Gemba walks and how they want to do it, because they're going to have buy-in. They've developed it, they've been part of it, and it's more likely to be sustained at this stage. All right, so that was that stage. And then if you get into the third stage, which I called rationalization and integration, that was probably from about 2015. We're still very much in that. So by this stage, the system's become quite complex. We're running multiple modules, and one realizes the need now to start simplifying and rationalizing where you can. Make it all manageable. At this stage, the MBUs are definitely no longer just an add-on, And one realizes that, it's now very much part of one's business processes, and one has to find all sorts of ways of integrating it into your business processes, or integrating your business processes into MBUs. So we re-looked at what the manager's job really is, and we realized that if his or her management routines truly focus on effective functioning and support of your MBU teams, then the job's mostly done. Because what else is there? It's not an add-on task, it's what you do every day of your life. Now, we started defining and formalizing the management routines. Sorry, let's actually go back to that. Started formalizing and defining the management routines. A lot of them we were doing anyway, but informally. But a specific one which was new for us, and I don't know, it seems like some guys have started a lot earlier, but we've only really got into it. Maybe it wasn't quite such a focus 10 years ago, I don't know. But we've introduced the Gemba walks, and I must say what I find amazing about the Gemba walks is essentially, when you think about it, the whole factory is now your team center. You've gone out from your little cubicle in there somewhere, and the whole factory is now your team center. It's out. You're now solving problems out on the floor. You're looking at short interval and controls and measures on the floor. You're jointly identifying innovations and improvement opportunities out there on the floor. And what I also like is the Gemba walks incorporate a lot of the principles that we have developed in the other modules. So I already mentioned problem solving. Visual standards from 5S and the asset care module come to the fore here. One-page standard operating procedures and standards from the other modules have become an essential tool here. Schedules from 5S and asset care. So for example, if we're in our filling area and one of the little checks, it's not a check sheet, remember, it's just a prompt sheet. Little checks is around what are the guys wearing the correct personal protective equipment. Well, I can never remember who's meant to be wearing what, to be honest. But the nice thing is I can take a look at the visual standard there, and I can quickly see, yeah, okay, that guy's wearing the apron, he's meant to have gloves, he's meant to have a face shield, and it's nice and easy. On the quality side, I can have a look, watch the guy sealing the bag, and I can see, does the seal look like that? If so, great, it's doing it right. If not, we can look at what's going wrong and why. So it really does bring the other tools into the game. Now we also started finding that there's quite a lot of overlap when you start doing a lot of work, quite a bit of overlap. Some of the principles come up more than once, although it's in a slightly different form, but they come up, and it's quite a lot of work to fit in coaching reviews for 4 or 5 different modules, as you can imagine. And CDI fortunately presented a solution for us that allowed us to integrate and combine the coaching reviews into a single 25-point coaching review criteria. And so, again, we went and redeveloped those coaching review guidelines. So the coaching review guidelines is a big document. It's about 25 pages of guides for the guy when he does it. But the nice thing is now cleaning, we can deal with, we dealt with in 5S and asset care, we deal with in one go. SOPs and visual standards, which we dealt with in asset care and the quality module, we deal with in one go. Problem solving, of course, comes up in most of the modules. We deal with it in one place. MODAPs, well, MODAPs is just a nice tool for improvement projects, question 7 of goal alignment. Innovate opportunity boards, it's just a nice way of displaying your 5S innovations, question 5 of goal alignment. And then other tools also have come up through these 25-point criteria, which we didn't specifically pick up in one of the other modules, but a really useful tool has been these 1-point lessons, and I saw something called 1-minute lessons yesterday, and I think it's the same thing. Really very useful. The nice thing is it ties in very nicely with our training processes. It ties in with our 1-page SOP concept, and you will be surprised how many problem solving, question 3 these days, how many times it's develop a 1-point lesson in order to reinforce this thing that's been going on. So it's become a very regular and frequent preventative measure in problem solving. The other interesting thing that happens at this stage is that when we're running, for example, a company project, and we've recently implemented an ERP system called Expedited, sort of a pastel-based system. So it's a company project, level 2, level 3 kind of a project, but most of the level 1 teams put together simple subset projects for their level 1 linked to this big project. So remember, they also needed to know what's going on in their little project. They need to determine what's changed in our SOPs, how are we going to get everybody trained and that sort of thing. And a lot of fantastic things come out of it, because what starts happening is one-page SOPs had to come out of this project. Visual standards, new visual standards needed to be developed, because what must that new barcoded label look like? So you stick it there next to the printer. Of course, like any new systems, and in fact, and for many years often, there are a lot of errors and mistakes and things that are happening. And so, perfect example for a new measure, for a new KPI, for a new chart, a new quality chart in this case. So now, at least three of the 6 teams are measuring expedite incident failures as a new measure. So it's really become part of what we do. The IT department suddenly became more important because of this project, because we had a very manual kind of a system, so this fancy system demanded IT involvement. So quite a few of the teams for the first time needed to develop service level agreements with the IT department. And you can just see sort of simple flowchart, one-page SOPs, visual standards there for the labels. You can see the service level agreement there for with IT and that sort of thing. So a lot of stuff comes out of it at that stage. Even new MBU processes like Gemba walks, we're implementing it as a level 2 project, just so that we make sure we do it in a structured manner, and we progress down some check sheets. We know that when Chris is back from his journeys, we're going to develop our nice tracking document, but we're doing it all. And eventually, I will write an SOP for the Gemba walk process, but just to define how we meant to do it. We also find that at this stage, we see it's great to see how all of the other things you're doing in your business integrate nicely with the process. So we have something called Good to Great. It's an individual performance measure for shop floor level guys, where you get a system of gold and silver and bronze medals based on individual criteria and some team criteria. But you can also get yellow cards, like in soccer. And then you can end up also being a spectator, which is an undesirable thing. The thing is, what's nice is that this, obviously you can see for yourself, fits in very nicely as an additional people measure in the business. In the Faircape group, our logo we have these principles of these do the right thing principles. It's part of the company logo, and there's 12 or 13 principles there. And of course, it's really just an extension of the company values. Question 1 in goal alignment. And so we brought do the right thing into our question 1 for goal alignment. We built it into our rewards and recognition system. And funny enough, you start seeing, where MBUs now are really just part of what we do every day. When we're talking health and safety, and we're talking about ergonomics and things like that, the guys automatically think MODAPs. And they've got some science behind the thing now, and they know that, okay, ergonomics project, let's do a MODAPs, and we can justify a change in the way we do things. And so a lot of very good innovations have come out. It might never have had the same momentum if we were just doing it as a health and safety thing. But there's that link now and that backup through that. And even in this new project we did in Expedite, this is obviously one of these systems where you can't scan the raw materials to the batch if the materials aren't quality approved. Well, that just sounds like a pokey-yoke to me. We've made it part of our ISO policy. So remember in the beginning I said we documented all these MBU processes, one for goal alignment, asset care, problem solving, and so on. But now we've integrated it into our ISO policies. Now we're ISO 22000 obviously with food safety, but it's part of the food safety and quality policy under communication. It's part of the continuous improvement policy, also a prerequisite for ISO 22000. The communication policy, and obviously almost in every system, the corrective action policy. And of course, I must say, our corrective action policy is almost just like my problem solving policy. They're one and the same thing. In health and safety, one of the prerequisites is sheer awareness and communication. And obviously, sure, we've got a wonderful forum for that in MBUs. So we've written it into our health and safety policies, and even one of the criteria is also constantly driving health and safety improvements. It's part of the legislated requirements and the system that we have. Well, that's fine. The innovation system works very nicely for us there. Thank you very much. We brought it into the job profiles of all the different levels, from the level 1 operator up to the factory manager or whatever. It's brought in there. So you can see, here's the requirement. You won't be able to read that. I'll have to read it for you. But one of the result indicators for the factory manager is to set set up effective teams and ensure review of performance and effective communication processes. And in that, all these things deal with making sure that you have effective multi-level meetings, that you have effective MBUs, that you're helping the team prepare for coaching reviews, team-on-team reviews, and so on. Conducting management routines is one of them, and specifically we'll read there, Gemba walks are conducted routinely according to specified routes and standards to maintain work standards, MBU standards, and provide support for the team's activity. So we built it into people's job descriptions. So, final slide. Is there a phase 4? I don't know. I don't know yet. We have still a lot to do to reinforce what we're doing in what I've defined as phase 3. It doesn't actually matter how slow or fast you're moving. The important thing is that you must keep moving, of course. It's important to continually improve your processes and your people. It's important to continually make MBUs the way we do things around here. Because really, you're probably your biggest enemy. And certainly when you've gone quite far and what else can you do? Stagnation really can be your enemy. Right, thank you.